Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm James Qantas, editor and publisher of Resource Opportunities. And with me today is Ken Armstrong, CEO of North Arrow Minerals. Hey, Ken.
Hey, James. Thanks very much for this. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to have a conversation about diamonds, followed by Ken's presentation and a live Q&A. But you can enter questions in the box below where you see us at any time throughout the presentation. So I guess a bit of background on diamonds. Like Canada sort of came out of nowhere, really in the early 1990s to become a major player with the discoveries of the Diavik and the Ekati diamond mines in NWT. And it's a bit forgotten now, but those two events created a lot of shareholder wealth for investors. And there's a pretty strong North Arrow angle to that development. Grant Thomas, North Arrow's chairman, his team discovered the Diavik diamond mine, which was Canada's second. So 25 years later, we're kind of a major player in the global scene, and North Arrow is Canada's leading diamond exploration company. So I follow the company in my newsletter. What I really like about North Arrow, especially at this price level, is the Naujaat deposit, which contains a population of fancy and beautiful orangey-yellow diamonds that you can see on your screen. So Ken, why don't you take us through where things are at on the ground, and as well as the deal with Burgundy Diamond Mines.
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks for the kind words. We'd like to think we are sort of the best positioned diamond explorer in Canada. So for right now in the moment, we have a new partner for the Naujaat project in Burgundy. Everything is in place to conduct a bulk sample starting this summer. So in June, we'll be starting collection of a 2,000-ton sample. Funding is in place for that, and we actually have some of that funding has already been spent in positioning fuel and sample supplies that are already there. Nick Thomas and I are going to be going up to the community next month to meet with leadership and do some initial hiring of employees, and we're on track to get started on that program the middle of June, and should be filling bags with kimberlite by the 1st of July is the goal.
Okay, great. So Burgundy's Australian listed, and they're spending $5.6 million to earn 40%, right?
That's it. Yes, and they've got so they'll earn that once the program is completed. But they actually went out in the middle of the pandemic in last August and raised enough money, so that funding is in place, and notice has been given that it's there, and we're all set to go.
Great. Okay. Are patience, and then also not to fall in love with the stock. So so North Arrow's been around for a while, and Naujaat's been the flagship for quite a long time. I think companies can also fall in love with projects. So what would you say to investors, or is this a case of North Arrow being in love with the project that may never become a mine?
Yeah, I mean, no, it's not. I think obviously we like the project, and I mean, with what we do, exploration is so hard. The last thing we want to be doing is beating our head against the wall, chasing down and doing work on a project that doesn't have any realistic chance, or there's not a reason to be continuing to evaluate it. As you'll know, from you've followed us so long, we acquired the project in 2014, 2015 by completing a bulk sample, and the result of that sample was a diamond valuation, which was disappointing. It was clearly at that level, it was uneconomic. But the takeaway from that valuation is that always stuck with us initially, was that the number one conclusion that those valuators had was that the parcel of diamonds was too small. It was about 380 for 4 carats of diamonds, and it was just too small to actually come up with a valuation. We talk about the yellow diamonds, and they're up on the screen, and they were clearly there, but the valuators had some serious questions about them, felt that they weren't fancy colored, that they wouldn't polish well, that they might break, that they could lose their color during that process. So we were left with a project that's a significant inventory of diamonds, and we'll talk about that. It's in a really good location. But we were kind of stuck in the mud with this valuation. But obviously getting a bigger sample was going to be there's an investment, and there's expenditures required to go back and do that. But the polishing side was something we could do. at really relatively little and no cost to some extent. So we took some of the best diamonds. We said, let's answer the question. If those diamonds can't be polished and they fall apart, then the project's done. But that didn't happen. It was almost the opposite happened. We had an initial polishing exercise that we did. We followed that up with a secondary one where we sent some of the diamonds to a polishing house in India. The cutters and polishers that did that work were fascinated, and I got a call from India saying, "How do I get more of these diamonds? These are fantastic."
Yeah, they're beautiful stones, aren't they?
They really are. And so, the next stage was, well, can we get them certified? So we got them certified at here at Canadian Gem Labs in Vancouver, and then at the GIA in New York, we sent them, and they were certified as fancy, vivid, orangey-yellow diamonds, okay. Which is really important. I mean, that vivid, it gets sort of complicated with these names and so on, but vivid just means it's fully saturated, that the color is there, and some of the diamonds are quite small. So we could see that there was clearly value upside in the stones themselves. And then a couple of other tracks at the same time we were working on as we looked at, well, why are they the color they are? And we did some work on the nitrogen contents. And what that study ultimately showed us is that yes, it's because of nitrogen in the diamonds, but that they are truly a different population than the white diamonds in the parcel. So they're distinct populations, and they need to be modeled separately. And when we look at the yellow population separately, we see that of the 4 biggest diamonds we've recovered from the property so far, they're all yellow. They're not as intensely yellow necessarily. Some are, not all, but they're all part of that population. So we're seeing more of the coarse diamonds are this yellow color, which means that population maybe has a coarser distribution, which simply means maybe we're modeling and underrepresenting in our existing model the bigger diamonds that we might get out of a sample. So that's what actually this sample coming up is intended to, the question this sample this summer is intended to answer, is the sort of confirming a coarse distribution to these yellow diamonds.
And with diamonds, and isn't it true that like the size, as diamonds get bigger, the value kind of increases almost exponentially, right? Like
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So that's exactly it. So there's sort of 2 ways where there's value upside that we can see. The fact is that there may be more coarse diamonds than the original model was giving the deposit credit for. And then the fact that some of those diamonds are this beautiful, fancy color, which then adds a whole other, potential sort of multiple or even exponential rise in price. So we've shown the diamonds to a lot of different people. So we did the work sort of convince ourselves, but for me to convince our board, I needed to get outside opinions on these things. And so we did that, and we showed them to people who have seen colored stones, that have opinions on colored diamonds, and the resulting reaction was always really positive. Say, wow, those are beautiful. And if it's a jeweler, they're saying, yeah, we can use these. How do we get them? So that,
I guess one. Sorry to interrupt, but I guess one name that comes to mind with colored diamonds is like Tiffany. Have they seen these diamonds?
Yeah, and sort of two ways. So Laurelton, which is Tiffany's trading arm based in Antwerp, has seen the diamonds a couple of times. Sort of even the diamonds that we had before, we collected the bulk sample in 2014 and expressed an interest in saying these are of interest to us because around that time they were developing their yellow collection on the back of diamonds they're getting from an Australian deposit. And then after we'd completed the polishing exercise, actually, Ira Thomas and I went to New York. And remember, this was 2016. It was we flew there the day after Donald Trump was elected. Went to New York, saw the protests, and that one of the meetings we had there was with Tiffany. And by the end of that meeting, they expressed real interest. And the main comment was, again, because of the size, it's unusual with colored diamonds, and particularly yellow diamonds. And if anybody goes into a jeweler, like go into Burke's or go into Tiffany here in Vancouver and ask or look at the yellow diamonds, they tend to be kind of a lemony yellow color, kind of light. Right. And often the diamonds are quite big, and they need to be big in order to enhance that color. But with these, like one of the smallest one we had polished is a 2-pointer. So that's 0.02 of a carat, and it's fully saturated, fancy, vivid, orangey yellow. And that's a very small diamond. And the idea there is the light goes in and out of that diamond very quickly. So for it to pick up the color means that the color, which is an impurity, gets picked up very quickly. And right. That's sort of part of the intriguing part of the story too, right?
Okay. Yeah, I remember it was many years ago now, but I remember seeing like the New York Times with a sort of a Tiffany ad on the bottom right of the of the front page,
Yeah,
advertising their the yellow diamonds back in the day. But I think that mine has closed down, hasn't it? Where they
it
got their
has.
yellow
Yeah,
diamonds. Yeah.
that's right. And at the time, and it was closing right around that time. And from Tiffany's perspective, I mean, they'd said they had quite a large stockpile of the stones, so there was no immediate panic. But as we know, mines closed, and another mine, Argyle, just closed in Australia as well, which was the biggest producer of fancy pink diamonds in the world. So we
Mm-hmm.
need to renew finding these sources, and
Yeah.
there's a real opportunity. So kind of getting to your question, like, do you fall in love? I think we did careful work to try and make sure. First, we had to convince ourselves that there still is a reason to continue to evaluate the deposit, and I'll touch on in the presentation again, to showing its location and its size, its jurisdiction, its shape, all these things going for it, and so we need to answer this question around value upside in the diamonds first, and then we can
Right.
carry on with the other usual things that we do evaluating deposits.
Okay. Well, let's touch on. Let's get back to share price and share structure. I mean, obviously, we're all in this to make money, and it's been a painful few years for North Arrow shareholders. Although the last year, nice bump. So I was looking through my archives, and so 2015, when you did the valuation before it came down, I think you had about 55 million shares out, and the stock was at about $1. So can you just touch on? So now you're at about 110 million. So about double the share level as then, which is actually pretty good by junior mining standards. But can you touch on how you preserved the share structure over the years and what you did on that front, and then also how you hope to get the share price moving?
Yeah, thanks for that. Like, we often are concerned and thinking about share structure with doing financings, and since that time we were doing that sort of legwork on the orangey-yellow diamonds at Naujaat. But we have this portfolio of other projects that we're continuing to advance. We did do some equity financings, but we also are pretty careful with how we spend money, and we don't have a big burn or big overhead. But we do have a team, and keeping that team together is critical. That's the route that we've gone down, is the people and our geologists are just integral to what we do, and in relationships in the communities we work for, that continuity in projects. So we also looked at other opportunities, particularly sort of in the last couple of years. We've sold royalty on the Loki project, which we'll talk about, to Chris Jennings, one of our directors. Again, strong support from people involved in the company to help us continue to evaluate the project there, taking advantage of programs like the Mineral Incentive Program in the Northwest Territories, selling non-core projects. We had a couple of non-core lithium projects, gold properties. We sold some gold data, again, just giving us a little bit more runway to move these projects along. And we were active through that period. I mean, again, as I'll point out, like the 5 years leading up to 2020, so leading up to the pandemic, we found at least a kimberlite on at least one of our projects in each of those years. And we retain all those properties because they all have sort of value, and there's a reason, and there's a sort of a key question that we need to answer on all of them to move them along. So we've been keeping an eye on share structure for sure, and hopefully that'll pay off now. Like with noticing the bump this year, and that's great, but we think there is more room to go. And maybe even with this delay, the timing is right. We have obviously $5.6 million program happening at Naujaat. We'll talk about the target we just came up with at Loki, which we're very keen to get up and drill, and just a change in sentiment in the diamond market in general that we're seeing, and I'll touch on those a little bit in the presentation too. So
right, yeah, coming out of the
the
pandemic, people are talking about a roaring 20s kind of scenario. I don't know if it'll be like that, but it could be, and it seems like China's already sort of heading in that direction. But like maybe we can touch on so Burgundy Diamond Mines, new company, Australian listed, and they're a pretty impressive partner. Can you touch on how that partnership came together?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. They are, and like I said, we're very pleased with it. I mean, the principal, the CEO of Burgundy is Peter Ravenscroft, and Peter and I met in 1996. I actually worked for him. He was responsible for the initial resource models at Diavik, and I was helping him with that. And so we've known each other for a long time. And Peter and I started talking right after the bulk sample at Naujaat, and he would often run into him at the PDAC each year. And he had a view, and I think 3 years ago maybe he gave a presentation at the PDAC where he actually said, he thinks that the next generation of diamond mines have been found. We just don't know it yet. And it's sort of commenting on how projects can reach a point where it's a very clear question that needs to get answered, but how do they get funded to do that? And he's been looking at a way to bring in properties for a few years. And I think that really came together for them around this time last year when he hooked up with Michael O'Keefe, and they came up with an Australian vehicle that they turned into Burgundy. And so right around that time, Peter and Michael and Gren and I, and we had a couple of meetings, and over a couple of pretty short conversations, we kind of had the structure of a deal together. Because Peter is thinking in my own, I mean, it's very clear that we're very much aligned in our concept and our group's concept on how to evaluate deposits and how to push them forward and get an answer. Because we don't want to be spending money, like we touched on earlier. You don't want to be spending money on chasing one question with a project when there's a much bigger elephant there that's got to get addressed, because then you're not spending your money efficiently and properly.
Right. I want to touch just quickly on Michael O'Keefe, who's Burgundy's kind of major shareholder, and my sense is he's not as well known in North America as he is in Australia, but he took a $20 million iron ore junior there to a multi-billion-dollar buyout with Rio. And he now runs Champion Iron Mines, which is the ticker's CIA, and have a look at that share price chart. But so, speaking back on Burgundy, so, new company, good team, but their market cap is, I think about 100 million. Yours is 15 million. So, like, to my mind, this is a case of some math not adding up, right? I think for both companies, Naujaat is the flagship. You guys have 60% of it, and Burgundy has 40% of it. So I guess how do you narrow that? How do you narrow that gap, or how do you bridge that?
Well, I think maybe you pointing it out helps. Just like that. I mean, I think it's a good thing to see a well-valued diamond company. Maybe that's part of the sort of change in sentiment, and could be a function that perhaps in Australia the investors are with closure of Argyle, maybe they're a bit more attuned just to some of the supply issues that the industry could be facing going forward, and seeing the opportunity in that Burgundy is presenting. And certainly from public information for the two companies, Naujaat is the main project that they're both looking at. So I look at it as a good comparable, and shows that there is room to move forward here and to get the share price up in the near term. And that's what we're certainly focused on trying to do and let people know. I mean, we've been pretty quiet, but purposefully, in that we haven't been that active, and that's changing now. It's changing with the Naujaat program happening, with the work that we're going to try and get done at Loki, and just trying to let people know a lot of these other commodities, like I think you've outlined to in your writing, James, is that a lot of these other commodities have had runs in base metals and gold, and diamonds haven't, and they're kind of the laggard here. So here's the opportunity.
Yeah, it's kind of striking. There's plenty of juniors that like pre-drill plays that are at a $10-15 million valuation. You guys are sitting on quite a large diamond deposit with these nice stones. So maybe we can touch on finally, before you get into the presentation, I guess a couple other potential catalysts. Like your Loki diamond project, which is in the same neighborhood as Ekati and Diavik in the Northwest Territories, and then also your gold project adjacent to Agnico's Hope Bay. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, just quickly, I'll touch on them again in the presentation too. But Loki, as you said, it's up at Lac de Gras, so it's almost like brownfields exploration. Somewhere we've been looking at the property for quite a number of years, and essentially, it's kind of the last well-defined indicator train in the Lac de Gras region that doesn't have a bedrock source yet. And we've been looking at trying to identify a target in that area for quite some time, and just announced last week that we completed a ground gravity survey, and there's a nice target there that's ready to drill. We had an idea that there's a feature there of interest, but it's really rounded out well into a target, and we're looking right now at how to get up there to drill it. And I'll show an image of that in the presentation too. And Hope Bay is sort of the one gold project we haven't sold. We've kind of held on to it, just waiting for the right opportunity to come. It's the Hope Bay belt is in Nunavut. The project's right on tidewater. For some of some of viewers who are old, very patient shareholders may remember, it was actually acquired by Navigator. So you kind of got to go back a spin out and a merger ago when our our family tree when the project was first acquired. And it's immediately north of the Doris mine now. It was the Doris deposit at the time, and there's sort of a series of 3 well-defined gold deposits in the Hope Bay belt that Agnico just bought last month from TMAC. And the property we have is essentially, it hosts the same stratigraphy and the same as Doris. It's the exact same. The rocks that host Doris trend northwards onto our property. And that this is a great photo that's up here now. Just up on the peninsula, just to the north or in the background of this infrastructure is where our property is located. And any other greenstone belt or jurisdiction, in Canada, like a Red Lake or Timmins or Val-d'Or, if there was a piece of real estate covering the same stratigraphy this close to an operating mine, it would have been fully evaluated already, and this hasn't. And so we're now looking at ways to ideally get a partner. I don't know that's something that we're going to evaluate on our own, but now's the time, having stable ownership at Doris and in the area to the south, is time to get some exploration done there. So, but I'll be touching on both of those in the presentation.
Okay, yeah, I've listened to some interviews with Sean Boyd since they acquired TMAC, and they're going to really ramp that operation up. And he's talked openly about how important exploration is for that objective. So that should bode well for the gold project. Okay, why don't you take us through the presentation, then we'll do the Q&A after. Okay,
great. Thanks, James. So, all right, we touched on a lot of things, so hopefully I won't need to belabor too many points as I'll take you through a pretty comprehensive overview of where we've been at, and certainly in doing so, I'm going to make some forward-looking statements. So that's our typical cautionary language. Corp structure, we've already touched on that a little bit, but just in terms of shareholdings, and I think it's important. I mean, over a quarter of the company is owned by management, directors, and advisors, about 27%, and then over another quarter is owned by 3 key shareholders: Ross Beatty, Electrum, Strategic Opportunities Fund, and Zebra Holdings, which is a Lundin family trust. And all of the shareholders have been participating in financings, even through that quiet time, and sort of bolstering our projects as we move forward. So our float is even, it's less than half of what our actual listed shares outstanding are. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind. Obviously, people, we often hear, and it's true, people are hugely important for any junior company. We touched on Gren, and I mentioned Chris, and his, going back to the Diavik and the start of the Diamond Rush. Chris Jennings was directly involved in that, and helping Gren and Aber select ground to be staked. And even before that, Chris was involved, and he's probably been personally involved in discovery of more kimberlites in Botswana than anyone else. He's looked at as one of the 3 key people in first identifying the kimberlites in Botswana. And Tori Chartier joined our board last fall, and she's also been involved as an exploration geologist initially in the Lac de Gras Rush and in discovering kimberlites in Greenland as well, and also on the business side, and as a principal of operating a successful helicopter company in Calgary. And Blair Murdoch on our board has been here since we started as a diamond company, and brings some also good business acumen. He's been involved with a number of successful business ventures. Probably the most well-known brand name he was involved with was as a founder of the Arc'teryx line of clothing. So lots of success there, and then key advisors helping us as well with Ira, Robin, and Allison, all providing input and bringing different strengths as we and our own team look at our projects and continue to move them along. So I do have a few comments on the diamond pipeline, and we talk about sort of indications of some positive news in the space. The pipeline is a term we use, and there's really the 3 components. There's mining, there's the midstream, the cutting and polishing, and then there's the diamond jewelry market. And that's really the luxury diamond jewelry market that we're most interested in when we talk about diamonds. And starting there, that industry is it was $64 billion last year, and that was down almost 20%, or in the 20% range in 2020. But it really turned around towards the end of the year, and you can see on the 2 graphs on the right that China was hit first, and that's where the pandemic started. In Q1, the industry in that sector was really hard hit, lagged a little bit. It was really hit in the U.S. in the second quarter, but both rebounded really nicely. And by the holiday season, we're seeing headlines from some of the top luxury jewelry brands of record sales and really having bounced back from the depths of the early part of the pandemic. Chow Tai Fook is a good example just to look at that. And they're the most valuable jewelry retailer in the world, and they actually accelerated their store openings in mainland China during 2020. Opening a luxury store is expensive, right? It's not a cheap thing, and they continue on this path of opening stores. And so they're, for reference, Chow Tai Fook's like the Tiffany in terms of brand for mainland China. So they're really, really important there. And then speaking of Tiffany, which you touched on earlier, James, but importantly, just at the turn of the calendar this year, they were purchased by Louis Vuitton for $15.8 billion US. I mean, that's a massive investment. And so I look at this as, these are the most sophisticated, the biggest players on the luxury jewelry market, and they're making multi-billion-dollar bets. So that bets on the future of luxury jewelry and luxury diamond jewelry, which means natural diamonds. The midstream is always a little bit more opaque. And I think just two quick takeaways here. And the first is that coming out of the pandemic, the inventory levels in the midstream. So these are the cutters and polishers. They buy the rough, they do their thing, they polish them, and then sell them to the retail side. Their inventories are at a low, and that's important. And they're at a far more manageable level. If you talk to some industry observers like Paul Zimnisky talks about it, it's at a level now where they can be healthy and they can actually make money. And tied into that as well is the fact that their debt level is half of what it was now than it was in 2013, all of which I think just means that they're in a much better position to go out and buy rough from producers. And we saw that too in last year. Obviously, this is just a 1 year graph of the rough diamond prices over the last year. Clearly, we hit this time last year. It bottomed out and stayed pretty low for the first part of the summer, but has bounced back. And just last month in February again, the price of rough was at a new 52-week high. So that means that those purchases are being made, and we're seeing that as other sort of good news are some of the decisions being made by the bigger producers. And De Beers is making mine expansion decisions, $2 billion expansion at Zhuaning. They're also expanding at Arapa and building a new ship for their marine diamond unit, and other sort of single asset producers like Lucara doing a $500 million expansion at Karowe. I mean, that's really important. Again, almost bookends what we talked about on the retail side is the biggest, most sophisticated miners in the world, the ones that understand the rough diamond production and and the future of rough diamonds, are also making billion-dollar bets on the future. And that's because we're going to need more rough. Production last year was about 113 million carats, but exploration expenditures are at sort of decadal lows. And so obviously these producers are seeing a need to make sure that they have future product coming forward and future supply. But overall, it means we need to make more discoveries, and that's where Northero comes in with our portfolio of projects. And we've purposely held on to these, like we touched on, to move them along. Yes, we have Naujaat, and also though our other exploration sort of discovery stage projects, as I said, we found in the last 5 years before the pandemic, we found a kimberlite each year, and I think we're poised to make a discovery as well at Loki in 2021. Just quickly at Naujaat, just to give an idea of people, so people see where it's located, right at the north end of Hudson Bay, just north of Southampton Island. We touched well on the agreement and the fact that we're collecting this bulk sample with our new partner, which we're obviously very keen on. But just touched on the other boxes that the project checks. And one I've talked about for a while is jurisdiction. So we're in the Kivalliq region of Nunavut. Agnico Eagle has permitted 3 gold mines in this region over the last dozen years or so. So you can permit a mine here. The project is located on tidewater, which you see well on this slide. You can see where the kimberlite itself, the main kimberlite, Q1-4, is located. The hamlet of Naujaat sits here. It's only about 8 kilometers from the hamlet out to the deposit. So it's on tidewater. And some of our work that we've done to look at costing is we estimate that just the cost to get stuff and the freight cost to ship to Naujaat and get to the project would be half of what the costs are that the NWT diamond mines have faced using the winter road. So that's important.
Ken, I know.
Yeah.
I know you've been working on road potential, like government road funding, with the town and so on. Like any kind of news on that front, or is it like a work in progress?
Yeah, I mean, it continues to work. There has been some progress. It slowed down over the pandemic, just as we weren't able to travel in the territory with it essentially being shut down. The hamlet is taking the lead on that project, and so that's the purple line that we see on this map, and it's something that we'd been talking to them about as a road would be really helpful, being so close to town. The kimberlite itself is within the municipality, so the municipality can control this and how it happens, and they also saw other opportunities for this. There's an ATV trail that heads out that way for people to access the land and pursue traditional activities like hunting. And there's potential for some natural aggregate sources out that direction that the hamlet doesn't really have, and even carving stone and so on. So there's a number of opportunities there. They're pursuing them. There's been an application where we kind of jointly are supporting them and going to the federal government for funding. The GN has indicated they're supportive of the concept. So it's moving along, and the idea would be to get the road fully permitted by the end of this year and surveyed, so that construction can either start late this year or else be constructed through next summer in 2022. And this is a nice photo that shows where the deposit is, and it shows its kind of funny shape and some of its dimensions. It's a big kimberlite. It's 48 million tons down to just over 200 meters below surface. It's about 11 hectares in size. At 200 meters, it's still about 7 hectares in size, and we've drilled holes down below 400 meters below surface and still remained in kimberlite. It's a big body. So there's, talk about spending money properly. We could go and drill this off and show exactly what the tonnage is, but we won't have answered the valuation question, which is why we've pursued this idea of getting a bulk sample to get more carats first and foremost. When we play with things like strip ratio, which is important because that impacts cost down the road because of its size and its shape, we estimated strip ratio as low as 3 to 1 or lower. And again, compared to the NWT mines, which we tends to be our go-to comparison, there the strip ratio is greater than 10 to 1. And so it contains a significant inventory of diamonds. There's over 20 million diamonds there in that 48 million tons, with lots of room to expand it. And there's other upside as well, just in the other
kimberlites. Quickly back to the Ken, can I just quickly jump in? Back to the deposit. Like you guys have, it's kind of an advanced stage project, isn't it? Like you've done some back of the napkin kind of almost PEA level studies on pit shape and so on, haven't you?
Yeah, like truly preliminary kind of internal desktop stuff. That was part of our whole process as we were doing the polishing exercise and looking at, what do we need? Can this thing work if we hit it with reasonable cost expectations? And all of those answers have come back. Yeah, if the diamond value is there, then this could be an important project. And there aren't that many inventories that have over 20 million carats of diamonds in them, and that are on tidewater that have all these attributes. So absolutely, that's been a part of what we're looking at as we evaluate the project. And just quickly, point on exploration. This is a magnetic map that shows some of the kimberlites and drilling, and there's clearly other targets there. And the main takeaway that I have for people is that the drill collars we see there, that's the drilling that's the drilling database. There has not been a lot of other exploration drilling. We've focused on like these kimberlites themselves are about another 5 kilometers away from Q1 to 4. And we focused on Q1 to 4 just because of its location and its diamond counts and so on. But there's clearly upside on the exploration side. But everything always comes back to value of these colored stones and getting a big enough sample. So just talking to what we're going to collect this year, 2,000 tons. That's going to the idea is to confirm that coarse distribution of those yellow diamonds, and then we have the opportunity to move forward and would need to collect another larger sample to sort out to get enough diamonds for quality on a formal valuation perspective, and that'd be the next step. Results from this, if we get the sample, will be shipped south in August, and we could and should have some initial results at the very least by the end of the year.
Are you going to polish anymore?
Quickly run. I wouldn't surprise me if that's part of it. I mean, we need to see the population, and with our partner now, it's not going to be our decision alone. But it wouldn't surprise me, James, at the end of the day, if we end up having to do a fair bit of polishing just to almost create a market. If there's going to be concerns or questions with how it looks when it's rough, we're going to need to take it to that next step to prove what the outcome is. Because at the end of the day, that's the product. The rough diamonds are still an intermediate step in many ways, right? It's the polished stones that end up in jewelry that drive the whole thing. So Lac de Gras, we have 2 projects there, and we touched on Loki and the joint venture with Arctic Canadian Diamond Company, which used to be Dominion. Only comment there is obviously they just completed their purchase of a caddy, And we've got an exploration program in the can ready to go there. That includes discovery drilling that's ready to go once they get their feet under them and we move forward, but that's in a joint venture. Loki is the one that we have more control over. You can see owning it 100%. There's 2 claim blocks, the 2 red blobs here. The one is around a cluster of kimberlites. They're called the monument kimberlites. And then off to the east, there's another claim block, and that's the main block where this new target is located. And this is an image of till sampling in the region. You can see there's an indicator train that leads to the monument kimberlites. And there's this other train, and this image comes from some government work that was done, a study to looking at this train that doesn't have a bedrock source. And the yellow star is where our new target is located. And just in that red box on this next map shows with some of our own till sample data that the train is cut off. The ice direction is to the northwest. There should be the easiest and simplest explanation is that there should be a bedrock kimberlite source in this area, and this just shows the extent of the ground gravity grid that we completed. It's in the right spot, and like I said, we're looking now at logistics and costing to try and get up there and get this thing drill tested this spring because it's a nice target. It's kind of a good size for lac de gras. And like I said, I like easy explanations, and the easiest one is that there should be a kimberlite in that area. 2 of our other projects are both kimberlite fields that we discovered. Mel, up on the Melville Peninsula. We made a discovery here in 2017, did some drilling in 2018. We found 3 kimberlites so far. Speaking of other sort of deals and arrangements, we did a neat small little deal that we announced early this year with Strategics Elements. They're interested in sort of gold and base metal and other elements in this region. And this deal helps us sort of swap royalties and share costs. It is an expensive place to look. But the other thing to keep in mind is this is about 200 kilometers northeast of Naujaat. So we can pick away at this project while we're advancing the work that we're doing at Naujaat. Just one graph of diamond results in the presentation. I wanted to show this one because it is important. These kimberlites are really coarse grain and had some really interesting micro diamond results, and not so much in number of diamonds per kilo that we tested, but the fact that we're seeing diamonds in coarser size fractions. So really, whenever companies are reporting micro diamond results, yeah, so bigger ones. So that whenever we're reporting results, we need to show data broken down in this way with different sort of size bins, and these are screened and we size them. But it allows you to make diagrams like this, because this result is, even it's almost 69 diamonds, say, from 270 kilos. That's a far more interesting result than if we got, say, 270 diamonds from 270 kilos, but all of those diamonds were in the smallest sizes that we see in this chart. It's just an important thing, I think, for folks to keep in mind when they try and evaluate diamond results. And then Pikoo, which was our first discovery in Saskatchewan, excellent chemistry, really, really encouraging initial diamond results. We found 10 kimberlites so far. We've tested 5 of them for diamonds. They've all been diamondiferous. PK150 is the body that remains most interesting and our most significant discovery so far. But there's lots of room for other discovery here. And we have a good voiceover presentation on our website that I'd encourage you to go see, where we talk about a little bit more detail of why this is. But there's some excellent chemistry, and there's some areas where we have sources. And if we'd had this chat 2.5 weeks ago, and you'd said, what is, other than Naujaat, what's your top project? I would have said Pikoo. That's sort of been bumped a little bit because of the results out of Loki, but again, it helps to show why. Sorry, no, it's 3 weeks ago. I would have said we know exactly what we want to do here. I would have said of all of our other projects, Pikoo is the one we need to get back to, and we need to get
the other ones.
Get drilling.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But now with the target of Loki, we need to get there in a hurry. So that's part of having a number of things on the go. And then on the gold side, with Hope Bay, we touched on that pretty well. The Doris deposit combined with Madrid and Boston have significant gold resources that Agnico Eagle now is in control of. So important just that there's stable ownership. This is just another shot of the mine infrastructure. We have a nice showing at Ida Point with some good initial drill intercepts, but it's really an idea of that it's the same rocks. We think there's the same structural setting and the same mineralization style. And again, on our website, we have a good voiceover that can take the audience through that. So I won't belabor it. And we got to see this awesome photo. I love this photo, which just shows, again, anywhere else in Canada and other greenstone belt, this area would have been fully evaluated, and that needs to happen. You talked about Sean Boyd earlier. There's a nice quote from him just talking about the importance that Agnico places on exploration. So having them as a neighbor to us up here, I think, is really important. And maybe just one thing to end on is we have this gold project at Hope Bay, but our diamond projects, but particularly Naujaat. Both Hope Bay and Naujaat are essentially on the Arctic Circle, and so maybe there's a chance to get gold and gold and yellow diamonds from the land of the midnight sun. I think there can be some marketing that we can work on there. But we need to stick to things, and we're active. Things have changed with the bulk sample, but we've had success, and we with this portfolio, I think, very comfortable saying we're the best positioned junior diamond explorer in Canada, and positioned to make more discoveries this year with Loki. So I don't know, James, happy to take some questions. I kind of rambled on there a little bit, but
good. Yeah, sounds good. So there are some questions. Paul sent us. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Based on a 400 by 100 meter target, what is the potential tonnage for this target? And I guess he's talking about Loki.
Yeah, well, thanks, Paul, for that. I'm not going to speculate on tonnage. I think maybe I would characterize it as a geophysical anomaly in Lac de Gras. I think I said it's a nice target size for Lac de Gras. It's not too small and it's not too big. You could take some of the deposits that have been mined in the Lac de Gras region, some of those pipes, and they'd fit comfortably within this anomaly. So 154, if we really want to wave our arms. So that kind of idea, I think tonnage is important, but you could get a 1 hectare plus kimberlite or even larger within this target area. It looks like there's maybe a couple of lobes to it, sort of that central area, and then the area to the east. So it's all speculation. We got to prove it's kimberlite first, and then we can worry about tonnage, I guess.
Yeah. How enthusiastic? This is a question from Paul Zimnisky. How enthusiastic are you about Loki, and what kind of program can we expect there this year?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, enthusiastic. I mean, the fact that we need to get up there and drill it, and it's partly, as I said, it's just simple explanations, like where this thing sits. The indicators stop right here, and this has been a very enigmatic indicator train in the Lac de Gras region for a number of years. We've drilled other targets, even within the frame of this map that you're seeing, the more magnetic targets, and we actually just clipped the very eastern end of this anomaly, testing what was a gravity low at the time, and we expanded this grid out because we thought there could be a potential for a structural host here. And what we hit there was it was granite, but it was heavily faulted and altered, and there was some gouge and a little bit of carbonate, and we felt, okay, it had been explained, but maybe not. Maybe it's an idea of being close. So we can really get into it, and we will try and get some more imagery out and maybe another voiceover on the target itself. But it's Lac de Gras, brownfields in one of the richest diamond fields in the world. We have a target at the head of an indicator train that has really good chemistry. We talked about that government work. They did some work with some overburden drilling, which helps add to the story. But the simplest and quickest way here is to just get an answer and get up there. So the program we'll look at, it'll be either a diamond drill program or a reverse circulation, lighter reverse circulation program. We're just looking to source possible drills and get them up there and sort things out. But ideally in the May or June timeframe, first step would be to get an answer, prove it's kimberlite, and then ideally we're moving quickly on delineation and diamond results and the whole bit. Don't want to get ahead.
We're coming up on 44 minutes, so maybe we might go a little bit longer because there's some good questions coming in. Can you touch quickly, Ken, just because you're more familiar than a lot of other people on, so like where are Ekati and Diavik, where are they kind of at now as far as
in their lifespan? Yeah, I mean, Diavik is heading. The Diavik's heading for closure in 2025, and it's like a hard date. They don't have anything else in the pipeline. So a new discovery in the region could be tremendously important because that infrastructure is all there right now. Ekati obviously went through the hiccup with Dominion entering creditor protection last year. They've come out of that now with the Canadian Arctic Diamond Company is their owner, which essentially are, my understanding, are the bondholders, or some of the bondholders of Dominion have got together and formed ACDC. And they've been working on sort of feasibility options and lengthening mine life. And I think that there's some real reason for optimism. We'll see what disclosure is like being in this new entity and being private and how that'll go. But I'd heard indications that there's some of the other bodies that have been mined. There's a chance to go deep underground on them. Other bodies like the original Point Lake discovery, like the discovery that started the whole thing, they've revisited that and looking at it at a feasibility stage. So it seems that Acadie maybe has more options in terms of known deposits or inventory of diamonds that may fit in and looking at new technologies. So I think we're going to have to wait and see where ACDC kind of, as I said, they got to get their feet under them and figure things out as they go, but they got the mine back open and it's operating. So that certainly is a positive for the territory and for the region.
Right. Okay, you kind of touched on this, but where does Pikoo lie on the list of priorities? Like when that was discovered, that was like quite a discovery in its own right, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, the diamond counts for PK150 were just fantastic. And so we, again, it's part of taking our time. We actually didn't go back and drill it again right away. We took a whole year, did more till sampling because we knew till sampling worked. And we've been able to show that and had 2 more drilling campaigns in 2015 and 2016, found more kimberlites. Again, probably the best is to go to the voiceover on the website, but there's an area in the north part of the property where we are seeing in the till samples the exact same sort of indicators as we see coming off of PK150 in terms of composition and numbers. And the kimberlites we found in that area, they don't have the mantle sample that could shed those grains. It's just not possible. There has to be another source there. And that's, like I said, 3 weeks ago, I would have said I would be most keen to get there. We have a program, again, in the can. We planned out what we would do there if with sort of $1.5 million to get up there and drill test those targets. I'm pretty confident we would make more discoveries and ideally with more diamonds. So I like it. It's in a great location too. It's in Saskatchewan, close to infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, power infrastructure. It needs more work.
Okay. What are the chances of getting a deal done on the Hope Bay gold project this year? And have you had any discussions with Agnico or anything yet?
Yeah, no formal discussions at all. I mean, obviously it's a natural to chat. They just acquired TMAC recently, so we'd look to do that, and it's just really nice that they value exploration in general. Is really important, and kind of counting on a gold market. So I think there's 2 ways to go forward here. Well, really 3 ways, but with if there's an avenue for a partnership with Agnico, then we certainly would consider that, or another company will want to come in and sort of add to their gold exploration company with a good group that can move it along. We'd consider that, and then the other alternative is on our own. But we are kind of staying focused on the diamond side. So I think one of the first 2 are the more likely outcome there.
Okay. And then another question relating to the indicator minerals. How does the chemistry of indicators related to the target, and Loki, I think he's talking about, compare to the Diavik pipes?
Yeah, I'd say they compare well. I mean, there is sort of a chemistry to lac de gras on that part of the mantle that we see. So I think the chemistry is good. It's lac de gras type chemistry, I would call it. You really get arm wavy. I mean, you get into sort of ilmenite as an indicator that you don't see a lot of in lac de gras, but we're seeing a little bit of it in this train. And there was a little bit of it coming off of the Diavik bodies as well. So if you want to arm wave and say, well, there's a potential, and it's just then looking at what the overall population looks like. We like it. And also it's just the continuity and the size of that train should be leading back to a source that has a good mantle sample that shouldn't be too diluted. We have been finding like kimberlites like 465 that we found at Loki a couple of years ago. It didn't have a strong train coming off it, and it didn't have a big mantle sample, and had very, very few diamonds in it. So it's really encouraging to have a target that does have a very nice plume of indicators coming off it in the glacial till, and that bodes well for the mantle sample and the discovery if we make it.
Okay. And then we've got a question about what are your plans for the Temiskaming? Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Kimberlites. Anything cooking there?
Yeah, nothing. We've really been quiet there. It's an area with excellent infrastructure, and it's sort of as an area play. It's important, and we kind of in terms of field work has been really limited. The bodies that are covered for the most part, and the kimberlites we have are probably pretty modest potential. So I mean, the fact we haven't done work, we've been going to some of these other maybe more remote areas, probably gives a bit of a feeling for what we think of it. But as an area, I mean, it is an area where more kimberlites are being discovered now by others, and it's an area that we're watching pretty closely. But in the shorter term, as we rank things, it kind of remains on the grassroots end of the list, probably for a reason.
Right. Okay, and I don't see any more questions. I think we got them all.
So thanks again for joining us, everybody who's participated and asked questions. Thanks, Ken, for doing this. And
yeah, thanks, James. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, we'll catch up another time.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Let's do that after we get some results from the field here. That'd be great.
Yeah, sounds good.